still got a ton of stuff to do on that thing, man. And I gotta have all that done by Wednesday. We got a lot of stuff happening here. We are back on it at Russell's. Studs are on. Rear axles have been torqued and cotter pinned. Steering couplers on. Just completed that. We've got our tie rods tightened as far as connection to their respective points, but they are not tightened as far as adjustment goes, because once we get the wheels on it, we'll set it. So when we went back to old school, and we got the cotter pins on these dudes here. So I've made this little adapter piece here, and I've hooked it up to my Motif power bleeder, and we have started to actually push pressure to this. I can actually see it coming out of the top of that grommet. This is going to help me get my first initial push of brake fluid throughout the system. So I just been letting it sit at 5 pounds right now. I'm gonna take it up here just a little bit. I don't wanna take it too high because we got this coming out of the top there. It's kind of a bummer, but it's also pressurized. This normally isn't a pressure side, that's just a feed side. I've rinsed that out with brake cleaner and sprayed all the old corroded crap out of it. Nice little river. You can see it ran down the front of the beam there. We'll get that wiped off. We are getting very close. Right now we're gonna bleed out the brakes for the first time. We've got our power bleeder hooked up. We're starting at the passenger rear wheel, always at the furthest point on a bleed out, and we've cracked it open. It's only putting out 5 PSI right now, but you can see, it's hard to see, but the fluid is going. Put the box end on. We know we're gonna go this way to open up, so I put my box end wrench, 7mm on stock wheel cylinders, over first. Then I put my bleeder on, and I try to keep the bleeder hose in an upward direction. Now the reason for that is that way you actually see the bubbles coming out of it. All right, so we crack it open. There's our first bits of fluid coming out. And remember, we've changed everything in this brake system, except for the main one in the body. All right, we're getting a good flow there. I'm gonna shut this one off. Brakes are bled, and we got the wheels on her. We've cleaned up around that master cylinder. Looks fresh as a daisy now. We're waiting to see if we get any more continuing leaks out of that. We've got our green feed line replaced on the reservoir, and we're gonna do a tape measure alignment on these tie rods in the front. We had to take a file to these because someone put the wrong lugs on them. They put countersunk lugs on them and smashed the heads of these. Rebuilt pedal assembly installed with the heavy duty throttle cable and a new clutch cable in there. Now we got to do the Bowden tube in the rear. Lots of progress on the board today. We knocked off a ton of them. The only thing I've left to do now is everything engine related. So install the engine, fuel pump, oil lines, fuel lines, mount the breather, and then 12-volt stuff, meaning I gotta get that dude. Whoa, what's this, dude? Oh, that's Andy Finch's 21 window sent over from the UK. Oh snap, Zorba under wraps to be unveiled to my brother on Thursday. That'll be live stream. That'll be after this or before this video airs, so you'll probably know what it looks like then. Just for now, use your imagination. It's dope. They took his bumper off to ship it. So when Andy comes in town, he's gonna put all that stuff back on. On this one, I got fluids in the gearbox, fluids in the brakes. We got wheels on it. We've got tie rods, everything somewhat adjusted. I got the Zerk fittings onto it. Yeah, we still got a ton to do on this to get that motor in, but I got tomorrow to do it in. So we're gonna knock this out, get that dude in that space there with breathers and all kinds of apparatus. Russell's Gia is that much closer to being completed. I got this breather box here. This dude's big, and I figure I'm gonna mount it on the firewall because him and Andy have the same tins. So I figure there's enough room back there to get that dude mounted and still look clean. So we will delve into that tomorrow, guys. It's 5 o'clock. I'm done for the day. I'm going home. We were given another task to do, and that was put this engine bay and Porsche guards red before we stabbed the motor. So before I did it, I pre-drilled my holes for the breather box. We'll put the nut rivets in, the rib nuts in after the fact. I do have to still punch 2 holes for bulkheads because I didn't have the bulkheads in time to get those holes pre-cut. No biggie. This is just a quick Dawn dishwashing soap and Scotch-Brite just to get some bite on everything and put it down. And unfortunately, as I was spraying, the paint is lifting around all the chipped areas. But this will get us past our little show we're doing, and then once it gets back to Scotland, this thing is getting blasted down to bare metal and redone. Got our engine seals back in, firewall and engine seal, and we've got our breather box mounted onto that firewall. So right now what I'm working on is I'm trying to make a template for the side, and once I'm happy with how this cardboard fits, I'm going to make a side piece that goes there, and I have some black ABS plastic. I'm going to make pieces that go in there just to make it look a little bit cleaner. I didn't want to waste paint putting it in there. And it's a big pocket with Bondo coming through on that fender, so I'll make some ABS panels. That way it's buttoned up, it looks clean. So we one for each side. I stayed late last night and installed the motor. I got my bulkheads for the breathers into the firewall. I had to remove the coil. Steve had mounted the coil back here, but it obviously interferes right now with that breather box. So I'm going to find a location for the coil. I got to change all these fittings over to push lock fittings for the oil system. I've already mounted my oil filter bracket right there, but I've got to get lines going now and button up the fuel system in this, and then figure out the wiring on the engine. This already came with the -6 bung for the fuel system, which is good. I believe I have all -6 fuel lines already made that were on the engine, whoever had built it. I got to figure out a breather system. I'm noticing the motor was very wet around here, and it's not too dry on the bottom either. I saw a lot of wetness around here, so I might be getting a Ross Wolf dipstick at the show for this to really help that out. But it needs a breather. There's no breather port here that we can utilize because it's a fuel injection case. This is the only breather the whole case has, and that's just not enough. So I'm going to have to figure something out for that, because I don't want this to be a puker, and right now she's going to be a puker. The valve covers are vented, but that's different. That's not the same as relieving crankcase pressure. So what we may have to do, I have one of these that has like the triple end on it with a big port coming out. We may end up switching that out so we have a larger vent coming out of it. We got Zorba the Gia is going to be shown to my brother today, so hopefully we get some of that footage going. And Andy's got to put his bus back together and get it ready for the show. So we'll see when they get here. There are piles of rust in this tank. There's just piles, and as I'm pouring it, I was like, wow, that is some odd looking gas, because it looks like liquid rust, which it is. So now we got another task on hand, cleaning out the gas tank. And this thing has a ton of solid waste in it. Get a shot of that inside the tank. So now we got to figure out, we're going to have to pull the sending unit out and do a quick wash on this tank. It still has weight, like there's fuel in it. Oh my goodness, did you see that? This car drove in here. This car pulled into this shop, and that's just a tip of the iceberg of what's inside that guy right there. That's insane. Oil filters mounted, oil lines are made. I got Ocean making one of these right now. So next is going to be doing our fuel system. So you guys saw that tank that we did. Nevada Off-Road Buggy had a Wolfsburg West tank in stock, so I can't be happier about that. That freaking store rocks. That is a lifesaver right there, because this would have been days out and we don't have days to do it. So, and it's good quality on a Wolfsburg West one. Not perfect, but way better than the mess we got going on here inside this tank. This thing is so nasty inside. Just stacks of stuff coming out of that thing. All right, so we're gonna get our fuel pump mounted. We're gonna make sure the fuel line itself is clean. I've got the fuel lines that came with the engine put in there. One carb is sitting in place. The other one I still got to port the gasket, like I got to match port the gasket on it. We're getting the engine compartment buttoned up. Oil system, oil lines were made yesterday. You guys saw that. We got a brand new tank from that mess we dealt with yesterday. We're putting a -6 bung on the bottom. We got a brand new Wolfsburg West sending unit in that as well. I got Ocean up front here. He's doing the fuel pump install, the electric fuel pump install. We're doing the exact same setup here, with all the exact same componentry. Carter P90091 puts out a good consistent 4 PSI. When Russell rebuilds this, he may want to change the fuel line in it, because this is a 48 motor, a 2276. He may want to upgrade it, but for getting around town on the show weekend, I think he'll be just fine with what we got going on there. We obviously painted the engine compartment. We mounted that air box, new seals in it. Ocean took this and blasted it and painted it, made it all nice and clean. We re-greased it. I have to have this thing ready. Thank goodness I got a couple extra days. Spike will not be taking this until Sunday to do what he's doing. When I say taking, he's gonna be doing it here, and we're gonna be spraying it at Hartlauer Signs, and I'll be filming that as well. We got our ABS panels in that I had Ocean make. I made this one, and he copied it and made another one. They just clean it up so you don't see inside those ugly wells. If you remember what it looked like before. Gives a nice clean look. So we are getting down to crunch time on this dude, and our list is getting freaking chopped down. So I see a lot more X's than blanks right now, so we're moving ahead, moving forward. When this motor arrived, it came with -6 fuel lines. There's a couple things I don't like about this. First, I don't know how long these lines have been sitting around. They seem rather stiff to me. I'm not a fan. You guys know I don't like these pieced together lines. And it was going to cost me a ton of money to change these anyways. Since I'm going to the store, I switched over to push lock. We're going to be doing push lock fuel lines on this. If I'm going to put my name on it, I'm going to use the products that I prefer. I'm not a fan of the multi-piece lines. I prefer a push lock, simple, clean, less potential failures. All right, kids, we are getting close. Fuel line done. But I got to go get one more clamp from SoCal that I don't have here, because I use those crimp-on ones. I use same ones for fuel that I use in my oil line video. We are going to do some wiring, because we got to put a battery box in right now. But my wiring I'm going to do is going to be quick and simple. I'm going to cut this loom back, re-terminal it, and put it on these three. And then I'm going to make a new loom for the engine. First, I got to find a coil mounting spot, because I'm not sure where that's going to go. The coil we have is a CB Performance that goes with the distributor. So I've got to mount this somewhere. I want it to look clean. So I'm not 100% sure where I'm going to put it, but I'm contemplating, you know, something simple like this. Not 100% yet. We'll figure that out when we get to it. But we got to make this loom. We're going to cut this loom back till we get to nice fresh wire. So it'll probably be somewhere about here. I'm going to use my seam ripper and remove all this sheathing so we can take a look at it when we get nice clean wires, because right now I got this that is the coil wire that has the jumper for the choke already, which I'm not going to be using. And we have our oil light and we have our gen light. So I'm going to make a new loom on here that's all going to be heat shrunk with black. It's going to go back there, and it's going to plug into my three-way right here in the back. Keep it nice and hidden. We got those panels in. We ended up putting a screw in to secure it. Ocean scratched my wheel while I was that son of a biscuit. Did on both sides just to make sure it was even. I'll see if I can touch those up. But now they're nice and secure. I don't have the risk of them actually like falling in. The factory ones, they were much longer and came up to these posts here, but we made those out of ABS just for cleanliness on that. Yesterday, Ocean got our fuel pump mounted. I made him watch my video, so he used that for the process of installing it. So we got our pump, we got our filter, we've got a brand new tank. So here's his sending unit, and you can see it's infected with rust and junk. So why put that into a new tank when we're going to be running 48s off of it? I don't think so, Tim. We're going to move on from that. I got crappy pedals, so I got to bleed out the brakes. We didn't have the pedal assembly, and we were using the power bleeder, and I'm paying the price for that. I should have actually put the pedals in, but we'll figure that out. I'm going to crack this dude over here open and see if I can get some air out of the master, and then we're going to plug this off, put a new green line attached to this, hook up the power bleeder again, because I'm by myself today, so we're going to be doing a solo bleed on that. I have not changed any of the bulbs or relays yet, so I still have all that to contend with. But if I can get the fire up, I'm not going to worry about bulbs right now, because I can always get those on Monday and get them all switched out, because we're going to be pulling a lot of the stuff off when we paint it. I put an order in with West Coast Metric yesterday for tail light seals, turn signal seals for the front, a cowlick rubber for the windshield, and new door handle seals. Just the bare minimum. I didn't get crazy. We didn't order a rubber kit for the car. Just the stuff that, oh, I got this seal too. Just the stuff that when me and Andy pull all the stuff off, when we go to put it back on, if I got new rubbers to put back in place, it'd be a lot easier than wrestling with these old cracked, oversprayed junk rubbers that are there. It's still a ton to do, so we're going to keep going at it. So we take it like a standard, you see a Singer, like for sewing. It's a seam ripper, so that's what I use to cut this sheathing back a bit. And then I use my Nip-X flush cutters to get that sheathing cut kind of as flush and as clean as possible. But you just see, like, as soon as you get these exposed, look how different the wire looks. Like, you can actually tell this one's blue when you get up here. What the heck color is that, you know? You can barely see it. We got our blue and green, which is our oil light, blue for voltage regulator or your dummy light, and our solid black for the coil. So now I can cut these back, put our standard terminals on them like they have already, but fresh ones. And then we're gonna plug into our three-way, and then I just gotta make my loom and connect them to their corresponding wires. There's our three-way plug, black to black, blue to blue, blue green to blue green. We've got a heat shrink the whole way down here. It's got a split off at the alternator there, so there's a Y in it. Alternator gets the blue, blue green goes to here. Power goes to the back side of that coil where you see the red hooked up. So on the CV MagnaSpark, the one closest to you is going to be your negative, the one in the back is the positive. We've also shortened this wire here. And now I'm about to finish putting this on. I got to tuck the rubber underneath it. So a couple things I've upgraded on this. I put that on there. So this is what it had initially, okay? So that is a 1/4 inch NPT there. And now we have a 3/8 NPT fitting, so a little bit better breathing. There's no other breather for this case anywhere in the front. There's no negative pressure being pulled in off the air cleaners because there are no air cleaners to pull off of. So I decided we better make that a bigger line. So instead of that little line they had going to it, it's now a -8 going to the bottom of the breather there. Both valve covers are vented that. I'm not a valve cover venting guy. I only do one on my motor. So I'm going to get this tin put on. And then I believe this engine compartment is buttoned up because we got our throttle cable cut, heat shrunk and set up in there. I've checked all my fuel fittings. They're all nice and tight. As far as I can tell, there's nothing else to do in this engine compartment. Thank goodness. If there is, I'll let you guys know. My very first video uploaded is a battery box upgrade. Go watch so you can see how we did this here. Pretty simple, pretty basic. My initial plan was to put this under the seat. Unfortunately, it does not fit under the seat with his particular pan. I can't get it in there, so we're going to keep it in the engine compartment. Now, when you're mounting it here, because you're going through this floor, and this floor is a little, let's call it lacy. So I had Ocean make this plate yesterday. So this is going to mount up from the bottom, underneath the car here, from down there, obviously not on top here. There's a support that runs right along the hardware, so that's why this is cut. We had it at full width, but so that's how big our washer is going to be that's holding that in place on the underside of it. And it's going to have two M8 bolts coming up from the bottom, coming up this way, and the Optima has two pockets that those fall into, so you won't even see it. It's going to come out really clean, really nice. We're going to get this box mounted in place. I'm going to make my positive lead cable because I bought a nice 2-gauge wire to make the positive out of. We're also going to make our negative, make it look super clean, get it mounted somewhere. So let's get to it now. I have not tightened it, but you can see the hardware coming through my rib nuts. And as you come underneath here, you can see how big that plate is that we're putting on there. These are flange bolts, and I got lock washers underneath them, like split lock washers. So we're going to snug these dudes up. And then our battery box is now mounted to the car. Came out really clean. I've got my positive terminal run. I've got my battery mounted there and screwed down. I've got my battery terminals out, but we're going to pause from this because I'm going to go get the fuel lines up front straightened out. So I have all this still to plumb. So we got to do from tank to filter, from filter to pump, from pump to body. I got a couple of reducers we're going to use for that. Just like I did on Jim Metzner's, we ran a throttle cable through there, and look how much rust is attached to this. Nuts amount. So I'm going to run that back and forth a couple of times to make sure that we knock everything out of there, put some carb cleaner in there and blow it out. I've already run the throttle cable through there. I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to spray a fresh batch of cleaner in there, some carb cleaner, and then run it through one more time, and then we're going to follow it with a fresh spray with some air, pressurized air. I'm going to put this rag on it, so when it blows the debris, it's going to blow it into that white rag, so we can see exactly what we got out of there. So 2 times I've run that heavy duty throttle cable through it, and so I've got an air line hooked up to it, and we're gonna blow it out right now. Fluid in that rag being over it. So now it's flowing. Now I got it at full blast, and it's now popping the hose off. That means all the fluid has come out of it. Any debris that was in there is most likely out of it at this point. All right, so we're gonna take a look at the rag now. You can see where the actual hose was pressed up against it, and this is all the rust and everything that came out of that line. So I'm going to do one more carb spray, one more blowout, and then I think we're going to be good to start connecting our fuel lines to the car. I messed up. I forgot to grab a filter from SoCal Speed Shop. This is the one that comes on the Carter pump, and it sucks. The ends are just giant. They're 3/8 instead of 5/16. So I put a VW style filter in place here. So this will be able to allow me to fire the vehicle up and do some test runs, make sure we got gears and all that stuff. I still need to wire up my fuel pump. I got to install the tank. I got to go get gas. Did get the steering dampener in. I did a bleed out on the master cylinder itself, just basically cracked this one open here and let it bubble out until it was solid fluid. So I need to hook the power bleeder back up to it and do one more round of actual like bleeding on it. Also, I tried to lower the beam more, and my shocks bottom out before it lowers any more than it does. I think I have some link pin shocks here. Russell was pretty adamant about wanting to run the conies. We will see what happens with that when he gets in town. I'm sure I'll still be doing stuff to this. I'm running this reducer on it right now, okay? So this takes it from my 5mm line to my 5/16 on this one. This is a slightly bigger N48 motor. I would hope that when Russell redoes this, he puts a bigger fuel line all the way through the pan. That's the proper way to do this. I don't have time for that what we're trying to accomplish here, because Andy D and I are going to start the process of painting this thing tomorrow. And I'm going to put a reducer at the rear of the vehicle to get it connected to the engine. Let's go do that right now. So out of pan, we go from 5mm reducer to 5/16 to a -6 vapor guard straight coming out of there on the firewall. So fuel lines are all complete now, except for the actual attachment of putting the tank in. So I got this one still to connect to that filter in there. On Monday, when SoCal Speed Shop opens, I'm going to get the proper filter that mounts to the firewall, the permanent filter that will stay with the car.